Welcome back to the ASN Dad Chat. We're a podcast and community dedicated to making sure no ASN dad in Scotland has to walk this path alone.
Our goal is simple: real talk, real honesty, and sharing our own experiences to help you navigate the system. Whether you're in our meetup group already or just finding us now, you've got a seat at the table.
And just a reminder, we aren't experts, we're just dads, and this is just experiences and opinions, not medical advice and not legal advice. Now let's go on with the chat today.
Hello and welcome to ASN Dad Chat. This is episode 9. My name's Andy. I'm joined by Barry.
Hello there.
And Sam.
Hello.
And this week what we're looking to talk about is the myths and misconceptions about raising kids with additional needs, such as the fact that apparently there never used to be any autistic kids in the past.
It's a new thing.
Yeah, exactly. A brand new idea that's come out recently. Never an issue previously.
No.
Yeah, that's autism. It just seems to be growing and growing.
It's just the new craze, the new popular fad.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it's definitely something that we'll be able to talk about quite a lot in terms of things that we've heard, we've had people say, we've heard about our kids, and even things you see online. And talking to the dad chat, there wasn't a shortage of feedback in that.
Definitely was not. No. Gave us quite a lot of material to run through. So. Just go through them as a list, do we?
Yeah, I mean, I guess off the top of your head, is there anything that kind of jumps out straight away that you've maybe heard someone say about your kid or someone else's kid, or just in general?
I think kind of touching on what you were saying there is, that ASN and autism, it seems to, it didn't happen back in the good old days, the golden generation, so to speak.
Yeah.
Not in my day.
Yeah, not in my day, when pints were about £1.80 or something like that. No, but I think, there's so many kind of misconceptions, and even like during those times, how ASN was handled it was just kind of shunted and put away. So I think if anything, looking at all these myths and misconceptions, it'll be really good to kind of gauge understanding with people who might not have any experience in this or who are brand new to raising children with ASN.
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously it's clear that the stuff in the past, it's just a lot better identified and diagnosed now, whereas people might have just seen as kind of misbehaving or naughty or just a lot worse than that, essentially.
Yeah.
Looking at it historically, I think it is a lot better now that there is more of that identification, and that also means that there's a lot more help for kids out there.
Yeah,
100%. I think, I remember my dad used to always talk to me about school, especially when I was younger, and we never really thought about like any sort of ASN or autism. And I know my dad always used to talk about like my dad was, I was very much brought up in an older family, so my dad's experience was drastically different to what you can imagine nowadays, or even when we were at school. The belt was still a thing, the dunce's corner, all of that sort of stuff. When you think about it, it's insane. And he was telling me all of these stories about like children who he would go to school with and he didn't have a lot in common with, or there was children who showed signs certainly of having additional support needs, and they were almost kind of depending on how kind of functioning they were, and I don't think that's the term nowadays, but at the time it was high functioning, low functioning, and a lot of them were like put to the front of the class, or the ones who were just kind of thriving on their own were put to the back and almost forgotten about because they were just getting on with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think nowadays you look at ASN, and it's so important, just like there's so many extra support networks now that are in school, out of school, in day-to-day life through the NHS, all of these. So
yeah, I think it's more about inclusion than exclusion now, to try and make sure that everyone's kind of involved. And I think it is one of these things that it's a bit different, especially with kind of conditions like autism or anything similar like that, where it is more of like an invisible disability. So a lot of the time it can just look like your kid is misbehaving, and it can just look like they're in a huff, they're in a tantrum, and at the same time it can just also look like you're just a really bad, lazy parent letting your kid do anything sort of thing. So and I know personally it's one of these things that it still goes through your head that Ashton can do something, then you feel like in your head, oh, do I need to put on this show that I'm telling him off because of these other parents here, because that's what a parent should be doing, whereas he's not doing anything wrong, he's just being himself. He's obviously doing his own thing to regulate. I think it is difficult that there isn't a big sign in his head that says I have additional needs.
Yeah. That's the kind of thing I find quite tricky, and always have found tricky, is trying to draw that line as well. And our kind of situation when Brody gets distressed, it's not as much now as it used to be, but he would tend to lash out. Mm-hmm. And in ASN sessions or places, with parents that kind of understand it makes things a lot easier. Whereas in scenarios where it's a kind of a mixed crowd, or just particularly in holidays and things like that, it's really, really tricky, because people just see a kid hitting their kid, and that immediately jump to the defence and want to batter the dad, which is not great for me. But I think it's really tricky to kind of deal with. But I sort of over time try to kind of get a thicker skin about it, and basically almost apologise once. Obviously, not giving him into trouble, like you say, because oftentimes that's more counterproductive than anything else type of thing. But it's trying to sort of challenge his behaviour, correct his behaviour in a way that isn't going to distress him any further, and then explaining to them, like, listen, this is why this has happened. Really sorry, because it still happened. It's still something to be kind of apologetic and make sure that their kid's okay. If there's anything you can do for them, etc. And I would try that once, and if the reaction was still like, I'm not expecting them to be like, no bother, it's alright, it's fine, it's sorted, but just if the attitude is like still out of anger or frustration, I would just walk away and go, do you know what, it's fine. Like, if you don't understand it, or you don't want to understand it, or it's just a bit raw at the moment, fair enough, I'll leave you to it type of thing. But I think a lot of that probably comes from kind of a bit of lack of awareness, in as much as it wasn't a thing back then and it's all the rage now and it's popular. I think there is still a long way for people to go to kind of understand it fully, or a bit more, and be a bit more kind of accepting of it. And that comes from being able to ask questions, I think, a lot of the time as well. So I think I would kind of like to say, before we get too deep into this as well, like, a lot of what we will say today might seem kind of like we're complaining or frustrated that people don't understand, but we're learning from each other all the time, and people have got to be able to kind of be comfortable enough to ask questions and not be afraid to be afraid of the backlash of it, essentially. Yeah, definitely. I think we've said plenty of times before that we would be the first ones to hold our hands up as well, to say that before we had these kids, we probably had no idea either. We were probably the ones that we're talking about right now that had no idea, the one that would be kind of muttering under your breath if a kid's going crazy in front of you in a queue. You'd have no idea. But I think it is one of these ones where it is just knowing that if you've got any friends out there, family, like, you'd rather they ask the questions so that you can do it, rather than kind of making assumptions, because again, the other thing we said as well, that every kid with additional needs are totally different. So it could be something for Brody, it could be the complete opposite for Ashton, sort of thing. There's not really one size fits all for these kids. So I think it is all about, if you are wanting to be involved, you just need to try and essentially ask what you can and get yourself into their world, as opposed to trying a wee bit here. That
I think just to touch on your point, I think it can be really difficult as well, like, from the outside looking in, because we're saying, very much ask these questions. There is no such thing as a stupid question, certainly in our eyes, but I think even when you look kind of outside in, and if you're stressed, you're like watching, you're looking after your child, and if your child's distressed and is struggling in a social environment, people might not look at it as, this person's approachable right now, and that is quite a misconception, because yes, yes, your child is having that meltdown, but it doesn't mean that it's out with our control. Sometimes, and certainly something that I have learned. Certainly when I met my oldest, I remember one of the first times me and my partner, we took him to the shop and he had a meltdown, and it's really bad to say, but I was actually kind of like, oh my god, this is really embarrassing, what's going on? Mm-hmm. And I'm like looking around to see if people are staring at us and all of these types of things, because it's so out your comfort zone. You don't know what's going on, and you have to kind of, your sole focus is on your child, But at the same time, you have that thought process of, oh my God, this is really embarrassing. What, how can I get this to stop? And as the years have gone on, and as I've got to know my stepson and my stepdaughter so much more, and you know their triggers, what can set them off, and it doesn't affect me now. If my oldest, he has a tantrum, I'm like, well, he's going to have a tantrum. This is how he's going to self-regulate himself. There's nothing I can do that's going to change that right now, so therefore it's out of my control. And
all you could do is make it safe for him in those.
Well, that's it. So long as you're prioritising his safety, so long as you're prioritising, this is our planning, so to speak. Our oldest, he constantly asks for shopping at the moment, but in his eyes, shopping means treat.
Yeah.
He can get a treat. We can't go around our local Asda without 2 or 3 stops for him to try and grab a snack. So it's one of those that when he doesn't get that, and we have a plan afterwards, for us it's that kind of reiteration of, right, we're going shopping, but then we're going home and we're doing this, and it's trying to get him out of that mindset of, I'm here, I'm shopping, is my treat or else, so but that can be quite a common misconception, I think, when the children are having these tantrums, that parents in that case aren't approachable, because we are.
Yeah.
It's just how we're dealing with things.
We might be busy at that point, but yeah, certainly. I think touching on what you were saying, Andy, as well, like the you don't want to look like you're not doing anything either, and that's the kind of another tricky. But I sort of found a lot with Brody in particular when he was kind of at his most physically imposing, when he would sort of at his worst. My way of dealing with it was, I should remember, was essentially to man mark him and be his bouncer for an hour and a half, which it took us a long time to kind of realise, like, that's not, and it seems really obvious, but if you're kind of distressed and dysregulated, the last thing you want is a guy behind you.
It's not sustainable, like, it's not enjoyable either, sort of thing.
Exactly. He didn't get much out of it, but and again, the kind of benefits of, granted, it was an ESN dad. One of the kids at the event had actually said to me, like, basically almost kind of took me out. I was stressed out of my box at that point, and he just kind of started a conversation with me directly about that, whereas that had never really happened to me before at that point, and it just took me right out of the kind of stress. And he'd essentially went through the same thing. This is what we did, and his kind of main thing at that point was just, you need to be able to step in, but just redirect. You don't escalate, and it seems really obvious, but having someone who's been in that situation tell you was great. So at that point, even the people approaching you, even though you might not look approachable, can help in that scenario as well. So that was beneficial for sure. I can't remember who it was, but thanks to him.
I think it's that way as well. It's similar with Ashton, and I think you'll find that half the time if you're falling about telling them not to do something, they just do it more. Yeah. Essentially, it's not until you kind of try and sit back, it doesn't obviously fix it straight away, then they kind of realise, like, I'm not getting this automatic attention every time I do this now, because it probably was the case that potentially a Brody, if he's hit someone like that and he's realised you're going to come over and do something, it turns into a game almost.
That was a lot of it as well, was just, even now it's still something we do if he does kind of start getting hyper or start, he struggles to sort of know the difference between excitement and distress. There's a very fine line between it, and either way it's kind of heightened emotions type of thing. So a lot of what we do is just try and make things, as like you say, just make it boring. Just try and
you do it very, very well.
I do, yeah, absolutely. I think the feedback for this week's podcast will probably say the same thing. But just trying to sort of turn it down to 11 and let him calm.
Yeah, Ashton's exactly the same. So like, he'll have the same sort of upset. It could end up kind of self-harming and things if we make him laugh too much. So it just seems that we have, like, any sort of emotion can be too much for him, whether he can get too upset or he can be too happy and he can be giggling away, and then all of a sudden it's as if it just kind of explodes and it's as if this was too much. So it is that balance, which again took a while to kind of get used to as well, like, you're so happy. But yeah, I think it's with everything with these kids, it has taken a lot of time to get used to it. And I think that's one of the difficult things as well, because I think you'll have a lot of people out there who kind of just have that automatic assumption, like, oh, they'll grow out of it eventually, all this sort of stuff, like, or giving you all these kind of magic cures, all the different things that you see online. I mean, there's definitely been some good ones.
Honestly, I remember there was somebody who years ago now, but had went to a kind of ASN event local to where me and my partner stay, and she was adamant that she was taking her son to Turkey for something to cure autism, and I was like, oh, okay.
Your teeth.
Yeah. So evidently, I was just, do you know that I sat there, and it's one of these things. I think a lot, an assumption that I think also gets made quite a lot is, you know, the autism, ASN. It's, you know, it's almost like it has to be cured.
Yeah. And
that's not the case. You know, I think something that's really important, and something that I get taught. You know, I've done, you know, courses in my spare time and stuff like that to help out, and you know, the kind of reiterating message is that, you know, autism, ASN, you know, it just means their brain's wired a little bit differently. They process things different. You know, there's nothing wrong with them. You know, and that's something that I would reiterate to everybody, is that there's nothing wrong with them. They just process life differently, and we have to learn that, and it's not easy. Do you know, we have to bridge the gap between our own children, never mind other people's children. Yeah. You know, and it can be frustrating at times. There's no easy way around it, but you know, by being understanding, by keeping yourself kind of open to, you know, new processes, new ideas, you eventually kind of bridge that gap.
Yeah, you'll learn something new from them every day, really, won't you? It's kind of it's sometimes complicated, but it's necessary.
Yeah, I think definitely 100%, and it's exactly what you're saying there, Sam. Like, it's not just like a kind of a temporary thing that you should be constantly trying to fix. And I think it does get to that point where you kind of realise that you're not trying to fix something, you're trying to just make things as easy as possible for them. And I think I've said before about getting into their world and seeing things how they do and try to make them as comfortable as possible. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not as if you kind of wake up every day and say, I'm really glad that Ashton has autism or anything like that. I think it's that balance between, there's acceptance you have to get to at that point, and just realise that there is a kind of, I know for me personally it was kind of like a grieving process for a while, but then it's also the way of, still your son, you need to then realise that there's still a lot here.
Yeah.
And as soon as you kind of twist your outlook in that way, things do tend to have a greater outlook, I would say. Yeah. Personally.
Sorry, I had I've got really into the sort of, I've spoke to you this before, almost the seeing their progression, you know, because they learn stuff differently, and often it's not as seamless, and it's not in the same order as what a neurotypical kid might be. You almost see these little steps, these little bits of progress happen all the time, and I absolutely love that. Like, that's something that
you hold on to it, don't you?
Absolutely.
You really, you know,
just
even in your
things mean
darkest,
so much more, don't they?
You just hold on to it.
Yeah, it's something that might be. You think you'd given the example before about kind of even just something as simple as just putting something in the bin type of thing, or that kind of thing. It can be. It's different milestones. It's different. It's a different pathway, but it can be just as rewarding.
Yeah, and I think it's that way where most of these things come where you're not expecting it. It's different when, if you've been trying to teach them something over and over and over, and it's still a great moment when they get it, but it's when it just comes out of nowhere, whether it is opening their packet of crisps, putting something in the bin, and it is just that kind of massive pride that you kind of feel to think, because I think it is going back to that whole initial diagnosis, you're almost kind of thinking that there's, okay, like, worst case scenario sort of thing, you've not got a lot of hope, and I think it's just through them that you build that hope up again, and they do a lot of things that surprise you and make you so proud and make you very happy. So, and I think that's the kind of reality of it, that it's not, with our kids, it's not just like a delay, and I think that's what other people don't understand as well. It's not as if they're just going through a kind of delayed development. It's like a lifelong condition. I think it gets more kind of obvious now. I think at first, when our kids are still going through a lot of the same stuff as other kids their age, But I think so. Ashton's 7 now. You kind of get to that point now where, well, what's he going to do eventually in terms of he can't always just go to soft play, all these sort of things, and again it's the whole birthday party thing where at first it was good, whether it was, I mean, a lot of the time I wouldn't take him to different birthday parties, but if it's a soft play, it's okay. Well, that's maybe potentially manageable. But it's when it's getting to the point where they're getting older, and it's kind of what is he going to be able to cope with. But I think that one of the things, just to kind of touch on the whole kind of misconceptions, is I know personally that I would still rather be included as much as possible, even though 99% of the time I'll probably say Ashton wouldn't cope doing that, or I wouldn't be able to bring Ashton to that. I'd much rather feel included with all of these events. And I appreciate it's a difficult thing for friends to ask you, because it's something that you can overthink. They'll be thinking, oh, do we want to say to Andy for him to feel bad to say no, sort of thing. But I feel that personally you'd rather always be asked to these things.
100%. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it is a tricky one, that, because on the other side of it, it's not always easy to be, because obviously you want people. It's nice that they might understand the limitations of what your child can cope with and what will be good for them and what wouldn't be good for them. But it's kind of I know what you mean. It would be nice to sort of at least be be able to make that sort of decision, because I've done the other thing with Brody, and being invited to something and being like, no, he's gonna absolutely hate that, and then like, do you know what, I'll go for the last 15-20 minutes, and as it turns out he had a great time. And I think sometimes
you never really know where it's
going
to go.
They surprise you, don't they?
I think something that I think that we look at especially is, we've talked about like routines and planning and stuff like that all, and we have to almost kind of we're thinking about how our child is going to fit in these scenarios. If it is a party, for me, if my oldest is invited to a party, my head instantly goes to, right, what's the exits? Is it one exit or is it multiple exit? Who's going to man that? Can one parent just take him, or is it going to be both of us? If it's both of us, are we going to need to take his siblings, or and it kind of goes on from there. So it can be very daunting when you get, but I think, like you said, Andy, I think it's better to be included if possible. And if you do say no, a lot of the time you can't really do much about it. You know what benefits your child, what would detriment your child, and depending on how the mood of your child on that day, you may be more inclined to go or not, but I think I would 100% say always try and include children with ASN, because they'll play different, they'll do different things, but that's an opportunity to learn. And I think it's an opportunity for your child to learn, it's an opportunity for other people's children to learn, opportunities for adults to see things in a new light and bridge that gap we're talking about. And I think it comes back to as well, like they're all different as well, so that's might be another common misconception, that they all hate noise, which isn't necessarily. It's a lot of these things that you can kind of you can look at as sort of assumptions or things that get kind of peddled, and people don't know the ins and outs of it, and it's different for every individual. And I suppose it would give you a chance to, if you did get sort of made aware of it or asked, like, you can then ask a bit more about the event, what's that, how many people are going to be there, whereabouts is it, that kind of thing you're talking about, the surroundings and everything else, and is there a point of it that's likely to be a bit quieter? For me, that's something I would always ask and kind of take it from there. But yeah, having the options definitely the starting point.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember it was at Brody's birthday. We went to the soft play that time. I think it was one of the times that kind of highlighted it, and it was quite busy. It's at Jungle Creek.
Yeah,
and I think the difference was, like, so obviously we had some of our friends there as well, and it was that way of like all the kids were able to play in the soft play. The dads could just sit at the table, whereas we were having to kind of run about the soft play with the kids and literally not spend any time at the table, and having that way of coming down just as if we had to experience the full thing, whereas everyone else here would just sit and have a coffee and have a good catch up. And I think that's a difficult thing, that it is just 24/7.
Yeah.
These sort of things. It is, once the kind of reality sets in, that there isn't many breaks with it all. And exactly what you said as well, it's not just me saying, oh, it's Ashton versus kids without additional needs. It's all the different kids are just so different, sort of thing. Like, that's not me saying that every single, you go to an ASN event, every single parent is chasing their kids through a soft play sort of thing. Like, there's so many different strengths and weaknesses, or so many differences. I mean, if I was to look at different things, so you'll have different kids who maybe have struggle with their eating, things like that, where it's obviously a huge problem that they're not able to eat or anything like that, and it's obviously a very difficult problem. But then on the flip side of that, you'll have like Ashton, for example. So his appetite is that he'll just eat and eat and eat until he's full, and basically until he's sick. And obviously it's a complete other side of the spectrum for that. But again, it's not a nice kind of problem to have either, to be like, oh, because he eats it's okay. I think it is, even comparing different kids with additional needs, there's so many different kind of ups and downs for them all.
I think just to touch on what you're saying there, like I look at my three, and like I remember we went to a party probably about maybe 3 weeks ago or something like that. They play in completely different ways, you know, they operate in different ways. You know, my eldest, you know, he's the flight risk, so he you know, one time at that venue he snuck past the attendant who was watching the gate, snuck past, walked through a room and jumped into the swimming pool with his full clothes on. You know, so we were watching him like a hawk. But our stepdaughter, she is quite independent in that sense. We say that she adopts humans. She just adopts families. You know, she goes and she joins other families and plays and stuff like that, and so that's how she thrives in that kind of environment, and she desires kind of a lot of affection, whereas our oldest, I don't think he would care, in all honesty, and that's not a reflection on my eldest, but I don't think, you know, he would care if, you know, we clapped our hands that he'd done a trick on the bouncy castle or something like that. I think he would just look at us as if we're, you know, where's my food? I think that's what he would think. But and then my youngest, he just runs about, but he'll try and like sneak off into like the really small areas of the hall, or he will take off his socks and shoes and try and strip. That's where he is in his journey at the moment, you know. So you have to, there's so many different things you have to consider, and that, like you were saying, you know, and something that I remember ages ago that I talked to with my partner was a common misconception is, you know, if your child is autistic, they are not stupid. You know, they're very intelligent. Yeah. You know, and you know, I look at my oldest. He is, you know, he could give Houdini a run for his money. Honestly, I swear, he's phenomenal. But the way his brain can process, you know, like little openings to get out of, I find it fascinating. Yeah. You know, and my stepdaughter, she like remembers things like when she was so young, and I'm like, I don't remember what I had for dinner yesterday, and she's reminding me of this thing that we've got in 2 weeks' time, and I'm like, okay, sure. And then, you know, my youngest, he at the moment is going through all of the nursery rhymes known to man, singing them, and he's like pointing at me to sing and stopping me when I'm going too far, and all of these types of things, and doing different voices, and if I don't match the same voice as he does, it's wrong, we need to start again, you know. So I find that there's, you know, I find children with ASN, and I was lucky enough that my best friend, his younger brother has additional support needs, so I kind of grew up with it, and I was quite lucky. I consider myself quite lucky because I learned a lot before I met my oldest and my stepdaughter. You know, I learned a lot how to communicate, how to help when he's, you know, stressed and all of these types of things. So I think like we were saying, you know, no matter the misconception, no matter the myth, being open and being transparent, and, you know, being open to new routines, new ideas, is so important. you know.
It's really is interesting the way that it is essentially. There's no, like you say, there's people that would assume that you know there's a lack of intelligence there, and there's some people that would assume that there's
bluntly
it's the
said
opposite.
that. I apologise.
There's people that would presume the opposite, that what you know they must be really good at this, that, the next thing, and it's interesting that they all just perceive life differently. Obviously, like one of your kids perceives life as, you know, life's just a constant series of gaps that you can run away through and things like that, and it's that they've all got just a slightly different way of seeing things, and sometimes that obviously can distress them, dysregulate them and everything else, but sometimes it is really, like, I would give anything to just see the world for a day through my boy's eyes. Like, it'd be so fascinating, and probably pretty hilarious as well, like a lot of the time, because I just wonder what goes on. Yeah,
definitely. I think it'd probably be something that'd probably be pretty overwhelming for us if we were to kind of see it through their lens. If the world just
look at them like, you are absolutely off your rocker, man.
No, definitely.
Something I wanted to ask: do you guys get a lot? Again, the kind of talking about kind of misconceptions, and do you guys get people kind of, you know, if you're trying to maintain a bit of control, or, you know, stop the kids getting
too excited
or whatever, like if obviously using your example in terms of, you know, if he's eating and he wants to keep eating, or with yourself, with the daughter, or you said she like adopts other families and stuff like that, do you, if you're trying to bring them back from that, do you often get a lot of other people being like, oh no, it's okay, it's fine, and then you almost feel like they don't see the back end of it, whereas when all this stops, that's when
it's going to be
the stress happens, like, and that's not,
because you're kind of returning them to baseline, aren't you? You know, and it's something that, like, for us, you know, using different types of calming techniques is paramount. Like my stepdaughter, she can't handle timers. If she sees the time going down, panic stations, she, you know, it just goes off. Whereas there's other children out there that a timer is soothing and it calms them, and, you know, once they see the time's up, they can move on. You know, so in that sense, you know, and you're happy enough that a family has been nice enough to be like, come over, tell, you know, talk to us and include your child in those activities, but at the same time, you know, you're trying to kind of establish that baseline and being like, listen, we're leaving in 5 minutes, you know, we're doing this, so we need to come over, start getting ready. You know, so it's difficult, and people will naturally, I feel the same, I feel the way that even all at these parties, I just want to jump in and parent as many of these children as I can possibly do. And, you know, if I see a child acting up, you know, the first instinct I've got is I want to go over and ask them what's wrong. You know, so I can kind of understand it on that aspect where, you know, you're sitting there, and I know that if a child was over, you know, coming over to me, and you know, I've had it before. We had our oldest up at Glasgow Children's a few nights ago, but there was another autistic child that was coming over and trying to take off his shoes.
Take off your boy's shoes?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. So, because he was sitting he was in his wheelchair, so he was trying to take off his shoes, and the mother kind of noticed and ran over, and she was absolutely, like, you know, in distress. She was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I was like, it's fine. I was like, it's absolutely no bother. And in that way, I sat there and I went, well, you know, in my head, I'm going, you know, people say it's fine to me, and I'm going, well, it's not, because this is how I process it. And I'm like, well, you know.
And there's probably a side of that, like, from a kind of vulnerability point of view as well, that like, I remember it was at one of the clubs we used to go to, there was like a bouncy castle on it, and I got dragged onto it, and this another kid that was there just come up and started kind of trying to bounce with myself type of thing, and his mum had come over and, like, dragging him away type of thing, like, sorry, he kind of gravitates towards essentially adult males kind of thing, and I was like, sir, don't worry about it, but then when you kind of think about it, there is obviously there's obviously a vulnerable kind of side to that as well. So it is kind of, you need to, again, just trust the parents, trust their judgment at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'd say so. And just kind of going back to what you were saying about the whole, you're trying to calm them down, and I think it's that we're probably all guilty of it as well. Like, I know, like, if it's with another kid, you're almost like, it's fine, like, I don't mind them doing this sort of thing, but it is that whole, this is going to affect the rest of the night. And it's similar to, I think we had the conversation before with Glyn, how Glyn has this great routine for Elijah for sleeping. It's that way of, do you have that one night and just really push the boundaries, they can stay up late tonight, whereas that one night of sleeping later that time can affect the entire week, the entire month, can completely throw that routine out. So it's almost as if that, I don't think people realise how important that routine is, how important you not skipping it for that one night for the sake of one night, and how difficult it is to then get back into that routine, everything you've built up for. It is something that's difficult, I would say, in terms of that. I wish I was kind of more structured ourselves. I think Glyn's obviously got it spot on with that.
I don't know, quickly, just to add on what you're saying, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but anytime family members watch your child, do they stick to the routine, or do they kind of allow them to stay up a bit longer? Because I know something that it does irk me a little bit sometimes, because I'm sitting there going, we talk about it all the time. She, my stepdaughter, she loves her tablet, and she will stay on it all day if you let her. So we have to constantly kind of phase it out and do activities and then bring her back to it, But at the moment we have a nighttime routine of, we take it off at 7 o'clock. She starts to do her nighttime routine. So her nighttime routine, it's the same thing every night. So no matter if she's feeling, kind of stuffed up or not, she needs to have vapor rub on her chest. She needs to have Sudocrem on. She needs to have her jammies. She needs to brush her teeth. She needs to set up her bed exactly the way she wants it set up. But there'll be times where we come back from an event or something like that, or the hospital was an example. We came back from the hospital, and it was like, she fell asleep at about 11 o'clock, and we're like, all right, okay, did you take the tablet off of her? No. And I'm like, okay, I don't know if you guys are in the similar positions, but it can be difficult.
Yeah, it can, and not exactly the same thing, but I would say that when Ashton was younger, I think the difficult thing is with family or anyone that's kind of been watching Ashton or anything like that time, it almost feels like you're being kind of condescending, because I don't know about you guys, you'd have to give this big list of how to deal with all these different behaviours, and it's almost that way as if it's fine, I know how to watch a kid, I don't need that. Whereas you need to say to them, no, you need to realise that this is a different type of kid here, sort of thing. You need to realise exactly what to do. If this happens, you need to understand what this communication means, all these sort of things. So it's that way you're trying not to come across condescending, but you're also trying to give them a survival guide and how to basically be able to kind of cope. But no, I think family-wise, I think it is just that way we said before, it was all about asking questions and then just really obviously getting to know Ashton and knowing all these wee kind of interests that there is.
I was quite fortunate when my parents used to look after Bodhi quite regularly, probably every kind of 6 weeks or so for an overnight, but they were very much like, right, what's the routine? What's the instruction system? And it has, as much as he's very routine based at that point, the routine would change all the time, and there would be wee kind of tweaks on it and different times and stuff like that, and it was all they were always quite kind of right, brilliant, excellent, and 99 times out of 100 he was slept at his usual time, usually slept longer in the morning, that kind of thing. So I think it's like you say, it's you're not being condescending, and it's probably to the people who have put yourself or put Ashton's parents to bed when they were younger, type of thing. But it's these wee things can be a survival guide, like you say.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's that way. I think that's one of the things that people don't realise. There's probably an image that the kind of essentially the public see of the kids, but then they don't kind of understand the kind of behind the scenes of the kind of 24/7 vigilance still. The whole, it's not as if when you go into the house you can be like, I'm just going to go up to them and watch TV. He can just potter about downstairs and do his own thing. It's essentially as soon as they wake up in the morning until bedtime, it's literally non-stop vigilance. I mean, if I was to go out a walk with Ashton, which I try to kind of do as much as possible with him just now, but it's still that way of he can't just walk himself. I need to literally grip his hand the full time, because at any moment he could just dart onto the road. He could do anything. I think it's the small things like that we probably don't talk about as much, that things like that in your life that you just get on with.
Yeah.
Which people probably don't understand, that these are kind of the high stress things, because just because you do it every day, it's not just a walk to the shop, it's not just going into the supermarket because they'll grab everything off the shelves and knock everything down, all this sort of stuff. It is a case of getting to the till and not being able to use a self checkout because all the things you've bought are empty already, sort of thing. So
yeah.
It's again, it's one of those, you know, people with, you know, without the kind of same level of awareness would hear that, and a lot of them be like, yes, that's just kids though, and they don't realise, like, yeah, neurotypical kids will do these things and then they'll stop, or they'll do it to a certain extent, whereas everything is just amplified and it's on the go and it's all the time. And
it's also, these kids are getting bigger as well. So it's that way of like, they'll have like, it's like the mind of a toddler, but obviously larger now.
Oh yeah, like I still have my oldest. He's obviously 9. He's, what's it with the weighed him? He was 54 kilograms. So he's a big chunky away. You know, he's about 5'1" now, and he'll still come up to me, like, I'll be sitting on the couch and he'll climb on my shoulders and expect me to pick him up and run around the room with him, and I'm like honestly, every time it happens, I'm like, well, that's a few years off my my life.
That's like Ashton. If I'll be sitting with my legs crossed watching TV, he'll just come and just sit on my leg and nearly like lunge me off the couch, sort of thing.
I've been climbed on a few times and the knees ended up somewhere I really could do without having a knee put. So it's they get bigger, but they don't realise.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's you wouldn't change that, do you know? And every time that I do it, I sit there and I go, I'm like, do you know what? He's having a great time, you know, and yep, he's currently, you know, he's ordering me around the house with him on his shoulders. You know, we're probably a combined 10-11 feet tall at this point. You know, trying to like slowly duck under the door frame, you know, so he doesn't ram his head against it. But you know, I think when we talk about misconceptions and myths, there's so many to possibly cover. Like, I know that we had a lot of responses from the chat as well.
I can go through them. We can even just kind of chat through them. There's definitely plenty through here as well. I mean, the only other one that I would probably touch on just quickly with Ashton, and I know it's probably the same for Brody as well, is that I don't know if you ever found it at all in terms of, this is probably more of a kind of misconception kind of within the ASN community and without, sort of thing, out with rather, about, because Ashton's got speech sort of thing and he is able to kind of communicate in a limited way. It's almost as if like it's not as severe or anything like that, whereas just because he can talk to a relative amount, he can't really have any sort of conversation, or he can communicate in words. I mean, he can talk in 20 different languages and through multiple YouTube videos, but it's almost that way of the kind of speech thing you always worry about. Oh, is he going to get as much support? Because as soon as they say he can speak, it's like, oh, it's not as severe, all these sort of things. I don't know if you've ever kind of had anything like that.
People tend to sort of look at it as like kind of it's verbal and non-verbal, and I don't think, certainly with Brody, I don't think he fits in either box. We usually kind of describe him, it's kind of like he's verbal but he's not conversational type of thing. And he's got ways of saying things in his way, and we've almost kind of got to tell whoever it is what that means. I mean, it's even happened in the doctors. It was a student doctor that went in and he just ran up to them and was just like, say hi to, and just got like right in her face, and I'm like, that's him kind of asking your name. You need to tell him your name now, type of thing. But it's that kind of thing of again, just because they're learning at different rates and learning different things at different times. It's too easy to assume, all right, he's got words that, you know.
I think it can be really difficult in the sense that, you know, there's so many different classifications out there, you know, to try and split your where your child falls into, and you know, people will look at it and go, like, I know for, you know, people ask, you know, oh, your oldest can he talk? And I'll be like, to a certain extent, if you want to know what the Paw Patrol's been up to lately, by all means, you know, ask away. But I think, you know, it can be really hard because, you know, people, and they'll give you the, oh, it must be really tough, you know, and in a regard, you know, I think you have to take it as yes, but at the same time, sometimes these people don't see all the great things that happen. And like you were saying before, you know, it can be something as simple as your child putting something in the bin, or something that you've been teaching for so long. Like, I know, was it my stepdaughter, when she eventually finished her potty training, like, for me, I was like, I've never done this before. That was awesome. You know, I remember I used to just get kind of picked up when I was a kid and put on the potty, and that was it. Whereas it was a completely different process, you know, and she deals with things differently. She would get almost so flustered in the thought of it, and she would hold on until she couldn't hold on any longer before something happened, you know. So I remember when we finally got that, and you know, when she finally was able to do the toilet, it was such a monumental moment. And we were talking before, you hold on to these,
100%.
you know, and it gets you through, you know. But I think, like, there's so many kind of myths and misconceptions that classify your child it's in a world that is not fully yet prepared for our children. You know,
it's a really good way of putting it as well. It's going back to the kind of that's a shame thing as well. Like, you ever get the sort of, oh, I'm sorry to hear that, or that kind of thing. Like, what? Why? Like, it can be difficult, but at the end of the day, as long as the kids are happy, that's the sort of main thing, isn't it? One thing I did want to ask, sorry, was something that's come up a few times that I think is a common misconception as well, is about screen time. And because it is very important for a lot of, again, not all, but a lot of our kids to sort of regulate and kind of, you know, almost have that sort of familiarity and all that kind of thing, that I think it's a common misconception that you're sticking them in front of a tablet or whatever it might be, when certainly, speaking for myself, it can be quite an important part of the routine, and can be quite an important how they learn a lot of the times. Like, they will seek out things that they have, you know, sensory sort of feedback from, and things that they kind of enjoy as well as learn from. But while you do need to kind of curb it to an extent, it can be quite important, I think, to use
100%. And I've always kind of thought that with Ashton, the one thing about having the kind of the phone or the tablet, it's almost like that's the kind of one thing that he has, like, kind of not full control over, but he can decide when to start, when to stop, what to watch, skip, back, forward, sort of thing. And he kind of control in his own kind of world, whereas obviously a lot of other things in his life have to be obviously highly controlled by either myself or Cheryl, because it is that way of, obviously between us, there's always has to be one of us kind of on him, making sure everything's okay. And it's not always a case of making sure he's not going to do something wrong. It's more making sure that he's safe, and making sure that he isn't going to do what we touched on earlier. He's not going to get too high, too low, and it's going to lead into a meltdown or any sort of self-harming. So it's your kind of, there'll be certain activities that you're on the edge, whereas when they are on the phone, when they are watching their sort of videos, you know, they're kind of in their own kind of happy place.
Steady.
It can be a coping mechanism, you know. And I think for my oldest, especially since he's out of school at the moment, for him, it's like you said, it's almost like a learning platform. You know, he's learning different vocabulary, and you know, hopefully the process will be for him to then learn how to use said vocabulary and sentences. You know, but he's picking up on that sort of stuff. You know, there's like, he's quite a fan of was it number blocks and stuff like that. Obviously his usual Paw Patrol, Thomas the Tank Engine, etc. But you know, all of these things, whether it's interactive games, whether it's videos, you know, screen time, it can be hard because you sit there and go, if you were to just kind of blankly say, oh, my child's been on his tablet for about 10 hours today, they turn around at you and go, have you paid attention to your child today?
Yeah,
like, what's happening?
100%.
But at the same time, you know, if plans change regularly, you know, if you're planning on going out to the park, and next thing you know, because we're in Scotland, it can be all 4 seasons in one day. You know, it can be a coping mechanism.
Yeah, I think that definitely we probably wouldn't go out with Ashton anywhere now without having that in the bag or in the pocket, because whether it is something's gone wrong, you go somewhere that's closed or something like that, that's the one thing that can kind of take him back to his happy place and kind of regulate him. But
even getting them there as well, like having that sort of having them with, you know, something to keep them entertained in the car.
Yeah.
To allow you to get to the place that you're trying to get to is it's important. Don't get me wrong, it can give you a wee break every now and again.
Well, that's but it's intense though as well, because it's intense. Like you do need that break, but
yeah.
Will we go through some of the dad's responses?
Some of the community complaints we can go through.
Yeah, we weren't quite expecting. Well, we did expect as much as
So I'll just go through some of these. So some of them are talking about people that would kind of judge safe foods that kids have. So essentially, if certain kids would only eat McDonald's or only eat certain fast foods or crisps, you'll have people saying things like if they're hungry enough, they'll eat what you put in front of them. But obviously, you know, that's not the case. It's more
take it as at least they're eating.
That's 100% it.
I'll be honest. That's the way we kind of look at it. Like my oldest, he's had smoked sausage and chips for the last 4 months.
So a wee call back to last week.
Yeah.
I'm saying nothing. But we'll try. There's quite a lot of these to go through, so I'll try and go as quick as possible. But I think we've obviously said before, like things when people say, "Oh, they'll grow out of it," or just a late developer. I think we've obviously touched on, but again, just as bad.
Things not to say.
Yeah. I think one of the ones that's quite important here as well, and I think it does highlight that it is a spectrum. There's so many different levels where you'll get some people that will say things like autism's a superpower, whereas one of the dads has kind of put that I wouldn't really say eating rubbish off the floor or smearing a nappy in the wall is a superpower. I obviously know what for some people there is a lot of benefits to it, but it does also kind of dismiss the kind of massive daily struggles that the kids and the parents face as well. I
think I think there's nothing wrong with looking at autism in a very positive light. I think you have to, you know, with our children and with, you know, I think a lot of the time my thought process goes to, you know, this world, the world that we're living in. Like I'm struggling to navigate it, and I'm classed as neurotypical. You know, that's arguable. But what's it like for our children? You know, it's completely different. So,
well, this kind of feeds on to the next one. Is he doesn't look autistic?
I've had that a couple of times. So what does it look like?
Yeah.
What does it look like?
My oldest, why don't you autism real quick for us?
I've had that thought many a time going through queues with a sunflower lanyard on and stuff like that. Just show them why you've got it.
Yeah,
you know.
Exactly. The next one we've got here is things like isn't your kid a bit big for that buggy? Because obviously there is essentially what's classed as a wheelchair still. It just looks like a kind of larger buggy, because although with our kids, like we were saying earlier on, if you're walking with them, you're having to literally grip onto them the full time, which probably isn't enjoyable as much for them either. If they're actually strapped into a buggy, then they can actually get about a lot of places. They're not having to walk, all these sort of things.
I've just to touch on that one, I've had someone before. It was at a Christmas like fair. Ask me why, like, and they asked me in a very like nice way, and I was like, well, in all honesty, they can either go in this, or I need to, you know, lift up 50 odd kilograms of dead weight when he's not happy. So I'm taking the buggy.
Yeah, definitely. And there's people aren't doing it for no reason or anything like that. There's
as much as we're saying as well, don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah,
don't ask them like that.
Yeah, think it through first.
Yeah. Have a good think first.
There's other things on here about there's kind of a lot of implications out there that people might exaggerate their diagnosis just to get support, or that people give up their careers just to be lazy and stay at home, sort of thing, which is obviously couldn't be.
I feel like that one is very difficult. Like my career at the moment, I don't work at the moment, and it sucks because you don't have that kind of work life. You know, it's almost like a social life. You know, when you're focusing on putting money away.
It can be escape as well.
Yeah, it can be escape, and
absolutely.
you know, it's definitely my plan one day to get back into work, but you know, with how my children are at the moment, you know, I feel like I'm best placed at home, you know. And does it make me lazy? You know, maybe. You know, do I like to, you know, lie and play on my Switch for a few hours? Yep. But no, I think you know, you're looking after your child's best interests, and whether if that is, you know, if that is you being there for the majority of the day, then you know.
Yeah, of course. One of the next points that a few people raised was in terms of things that they would want to say to kind of maybe like friends in their life or family members. Things like it takes 2 seconds to send a text message to ask how you or the kids are doing, but so many friends and family members just don't bother. I think that's a difficult one, because obviously, again, we've said it's a difficult subject to approach. I think in terms of kind of having that text message, I'd also say that it is a two-way street. Almost you kind of need to invite them into it, because I would find it difficult if I wasn't the parent of a child with additional needs, to know the kind of right words or kind of the right venue to say, do you want to go and do this event? Whereas
I'm guilty of this one. I am, like, there's so many times I sit there and go, you know, oh, nobody's messaged like in ages or whatever, and I'm like, evidently they just don't care. And then I sit there and go, well, I haven't messaged them either, so you know, I'm a bit of a hypocrite in that one. So I'll take I'll take that one on the chin.
At you,
I'll take that one on the chin.
Message a mask of Ashton, isn't
it? I think one of the big ones on here, again, we already touched on it, but there's a real desire just to be invited to things by mates, even if you have to say no 99% of the time because of the kids. The invite still matters massively.
I think it applies. I think it can apply. Like, I think about like school and stuff like that. Like, not being invited felt awful, you know, and the same applies when you have kids. Even if you're going to say no, it's the thought that counts. I think, in my opinion, you know, you want to feel included, and if you're going to say no, and maybe from that other person's perspective, they're like, well, they're just going to say no anyway. There's no point, you know. But it actually makes a difference.
Yeah,
know?
Definitely. And the last one we've got here from the dads is just the overall realisation that with kind of the situation that we're in, with the kind of kids that we have, that your overall circle shrinks massively, and that's why a lot of the dads have found it beneficial having the dads group, having a lot of other parents in there that just kind of understand what you're going through, because it has seen that a lot of people have lost friends and lost family members and stuff. So I think it is beneficial to kind of find your community to try and
I wouldn't say. I think it's hard to say to define lost. You know, people grow distant. I would say. You know, a lot of my, you know, friends at university and, you know, close friends that I had at school, they've kind of all gone their separate ways. And there's times where I sit there and go, wow, I've got a very small circle of friends, but at the same time, I'm in a period where, you know, I'm bringing up children. I might move on to then a career path in the next 5-10 years, and they might decide to have children, and then, you know, it'll flip. So it's kind of, I think it's just part of life. You know? It sucks, but
I think so.
You know.
It shrinks to an extent, and it kind of refines to an extent as well, and you kind of the real ones are always there, type of thing.
Definitely. Yeah, so I think we've obviously went through quite a lot on today's episode. I mean, if there's anyone else out there that's got any myths or misconceptions or any sort of bad advice or comments or anything that we've missed out, then
darkly humorous stories about silly things people have said,
then drop us a message, Instagram, Facebook, and we can look to include it on a future show.
As at the end of every episode, we tend to shout out a place that a lot of our children like to go to. This week we've decided that we're going to shout out Monty's Farm in Helensburgh. It's a wonderful area. They've got outdoor activities, a bouncy balloon. They've got animals that you can walk around and feed. Then they've got an indoor play area with kind of one exit, which is really ideal. They have a shop. They've got plenty of things to keep your child entertained. We spoke to, me and my partner, we spoke to the lady who's in charge, and we said that we were doing this podcast, and she said if there's anything, any questions that anybody would like, they could Google them and reach out. They're very open and honest with these things. You can also get semi-annual passes that we've got at the moment for our child. So there's a lot of, you can also sign up for Monty's Mates, which is an email list, and they will send you out ASN specific sessions and the dates, etc. for when that is. So again, that's Monty's Farm, and that's down in Helensburgh.
Excellent. It's not a place I've been to, but a place I'd quite like to
I
check out.
I would highly advise it. It's the ASN sessions in particular are very good.
That's what I was going to ask. They've got
yeah,
ASN sessions dedicated to ASN
are very good. They're normally, I think, they're around about maybe like 3 to 5, around about that time frame. So it's after everybody has been and played. They do obviously sessions that are, everybody's welcome. And I think it's a very reasonable price. The food's great. The animals are brilliant. You can see Highland cows, there's goats, there's sheep, there's pigs, chickens, all that sort. So if your children love that sort of stuff, by all means, I would highly recommend it.
Sounds like a winner. So yeah, again, that was Monty's Farm. So that's basically all we've got time for this week on ASN Dead Chat. Thank you very much for listening, and we will speak to you next week.
See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you want to get involved or get in touch with us, you can find us on Facebook or Instagram under ASN Dad Chat.